All right, we are moving on to lesson 3 in our quest to learn how to find the volume of something. Except for this one, we are going to be using formulas, which is another way of saying that we're using multiplication problems to find that volume. So we'll demonstrate a few of those and show you the formulas that we'll be using. So the formulas we'll be using are here. We've got each of these letters that's in this formula here and this formula right here. Those letters do represent things. Obviously, the V here for both of those represents volume. For this first one, the letter L represents the length of your rectangular prism. The W stands for the width, and the H stands for the height. Now, what's the same about these two formulas is they do share some letters. You'll notice that both of these have the letter H, so I don't have to identify that in the second formula, but B stands for the base of an object. And what we'll learn today is basically what we mean when we talk about the base of a rectangular prism, and show you how to do it that way. So, in the second part, we'll get into later lessons, but recognize volume as additive. That just means if you have a rectangle, like a shape that has a couple different rectangular prisms together, you can show that you can find the volume of one and find the volume of the other, then add them together. But that'll make more sense in later lesson. All right, so if you're learning from home, just go ahead and open your workbook up to page 33. I will be going over the notes, and what you see on the video is what you should see in the book as well. Okay, so at the top of page 33, we have Becky uses 1-inch cubes to create a model for a small paper gift bag she's making. How nice of her. Her model is a rectangular prism. So right away, I tell kids to pay attention to what the units are on this, and this is going to be cubic inches. Your final answer will be inches with a little 3, and we want to find the volume of Becky's model. So instead of solving that, let's look at the next page with some options here. Okay. So this is on page 33, or 34, excuse me. It says, how can you find the volume of Becky's model without counting each of these cubes? What are some ways or some techniques that you can find the answer here for this one? So think about that for a second, and then we'll give a couple examples of how we can solve this. So and this is something we would probably discuss in class, but one way that we could do it, if you look at number 2, is we can find that this gift bag has the 3 measurements we need. It's got a height, our H, it has a width, our W, and it has our length. Again, this is what the actual gift bag looks like, and this is a rectangular prism on the right that was in the problem. So we're going to be using that to answer these next 2 questions. All right, the first technique is let's find the base or the bottom. What that basically means is the base is the very bottom layer right there. So we want to find out what that is worth. So we know that if the base is 10, we know we've got 10, 20, 30, 40 total volume. But let's work backwards. Let's take our answer and then work backwards to show how we found that using a formula. So for this one, 40 would be the total volume. Right here where it has the B for the base, it wants to know what the base is. You find the base by multiplying this bottom number, these bottom 2 numbers to give you a 10. And then the height is right here. That's going to be a 4. So 40 equals 10 times 4. V equals base times height, which is there. So make sure you're filling these in on your workbook, because again, we're taking the formula and we're working backwards. So there's that. Let's try a different technique. Let's think of it, we've got all three of our measurements here. We've got our length, our width, and our height. We know that this volume is 40 cubic inches. So we know that that's 40. We've got the length and the width, which we know is 5. Here's our L. So there's our 5. Here's our width, which is 2. And here's our height, which is 4. So we know volume, this V for volume equals length times width, and that 4 is your height. Length times width times height. So that's where those formulas come from. So you've got two different techniques. Find the base and then multiply it by the height, or you can multiply all three together to get the same answer. You're both going to get 40 square inches for both of these. And lastly, this part down here, we reflect on it. How are the two volume formulas you wrote alike and how are they different? Well, let's talk about what they're alike. The main thing is that they both use multiplication. That's simple enough. We both were using multiplication for both of those. And how are they different? Well, you could simply say, well, they have different letters in them. That's true. They've got some of the same letters, but different letters. But that first formula uses the base. The first formula finds the base. So that's a different technique. Now, whatever way works for you is going to be better. That's fine. You can take the three numbers and multiply them, or multiply those the length and width at the bottom first to create your base, and then go from there. So that's entirely up to you. They both get the same answer. Okay, your homework is going to be an interactive tutorial in iReady Math. I'll put the link in Schoology for you, so click on that. And it'll go through like an animated video that has you work through trying to find the volume. And it's not unlike the other one the other day where you counted cubes. This time you're going to use formulas.